Sarah, Paul's wife, clung to his trouser with determination, her voice rising in frustration. "Paul, tell me, how do you expect me to cook soup for 9 children with just 500 naira? Am I a magician? All you know is how to get me pregnant and then leave me to suffer." Before we dive further into this hilarious scene, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on the notification bell, and let us know where you are watching from in the comments. Paul's day started just like any other, with a loud, thunderous voice that could only belong to his wife, Sarah. If there were an award for the loudest morning call in the neighborhood, Sarah would win every year without fail. Today, however, her voice wasn't just loud, it was frighteningly loud, more terrifying than the rooster that usually served as the official wake-up call. "Paul!" Sarah shouted from the kitchen, causing Paul to jolt up from the mat, his heart racing. He looked around, wondering if his name was being called by someone else, but the piercing sound could only mean one thing. Sarah was not happy. "Eh? Sarah?" Paul stammered, rubbing his eyes in an attempt to clear the sleep. "Good morning, Na." "Good morning?" Sarah's voice was louder now, rising to the occasion like an angry hornet. She marched into the room and grabbed Paul's trousers, pulling them off the small hook where they hung, nearly dragging him with them. "Paul, what kind of husband are you?" she yelled, shaking his trouser in the air as if it were a flag of defeat. "How can you give me 500 naira and expect me to cook soup for 9 children? Am I a magician? Am I the one who made the magic soup that TikTok women cook with just 200 naira and a handful of seasoning? All you know how to do is impregnate me and leave me to suffer." Paul, still groggy and not fully processing the situation, scratched his head and stammered, "But Sarah, I told you, times are hard. Maybe you should learn how to turn that 500 naira into magic soup. Those TikTok women, they do wonders. You should learn something from them." Sarah threw his trouser aside with a huff and a roll of her eyes, her face a perfect mix of exhaustion and frustration. "Instead of watching TikTok videos, I am here raising a football team of kids. How am I supposed to make a decent meal for this hungry mob with 500 naira? She shot back, crossing her arms as she glared at him. Their children, all 9 of them, heard the argument from the next room and immediately started chanting in unison. "Mama, we are hungry! Mama, we are hungry!" Paul's shoulders sagged. All right, he muttered, throwing his hands up in surrender. "I'll go and look for money." He grabbed his slippers and made his way toward the door, although he had no clue where to start. The day was already off to a rough and hilariously familiar beginning. The evening came, and Paul finally had a moment to himself, or so he thought. As he sat down to enjoy the small turkey leg he had somehow managed to acquire thanks to some alternative methods that he wouldn't dare explain, he heard it again. Knock, knock. That dreaded sound that signaled a disaster waiting to happen. "Ah, not today," Paul muttered, looking at the turkey leg in his hand as though it was the last meal he'd ever have. "Not today, landlord, I swear." His prayer went unanswered, of course. The landlord who had been hunting him for 5 years of unpaid rent that arrived like an old warlord coming for his overdue tribute. Paul knew he had no choice but to deal with it. There was no escaping today's reckoning. With his heart pounding, Paul turned to his 7-year-old son, Ororo, who was busy playing with an old plastic bottle. Probably dreaming of a better life-phone that didn't involve his father's financial misadventures. "Ororo," Paul said in a hushed tone, hoping his son could perform a small miracle, "go and tell the landlord that I am not around. Just tell him I've gone to the village, you understand?" Ororo looked up, eyes wide, and nodded enthusiastically. "Okay, Papa, I'll tell him." Without a second thought, Ororo dashed out the door. Paul let out a relieved sigh. "Ah, small boy will save me today." He returned to his turkey leg, but just as he was about to take a bite, he heard Ororo's voice coming from the front door. "My daddy said to tell you he's not around," Ororo announced proudly to the landlord, who stood in the doorway, clearly confused. The landlord blinked. "What? He told you to say he's not around?" Aurora, not missing a beat and clearly enjoying his new role as the family's ambassador, added, "Yes, Oga landlord. He's even eating turkey now. Daddy won bet yesterday, and we're celebrating. Will you join us?" Paul's stomach churned. Turkey? Did Aurora just say turkey? His heart skipped a beat, and he stood up, eyes wide with panic. No, Aurora. What are you saying? You are going to get me into trouble. He tried to rush outside, but was too late. Aurora, the little salesman, was already deep into negotiations with the landlord. The landlord's eyes lit up with greed. Wait a minute, Turkey? A bet? I am in, he exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. Aurora turned and ran back to the house, his tiny feet pattering like the sound of doom itself. Daddy, I told him what you said, and now he's coming to eat turkey with us. Paul froze, his turkey leg suspended in midair. You what? He dropped the turkey onto the table as panic set in. Aurora, what have you done? This boy is going to kill me. Before Paul could make a move, the landlord was already inside, walking straight toward him with a gleam in his eye. Paul, so you are eating turkey, eh? The landlord said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You haven't paid rent for 5 years, but you are here eating bet money and celebrating? Where is my money? Paul stammered, trying to explain himself. No, Oga landlord, it's not what it looks like. This turkey, it's, from the government's agricultural program. Yes. The government has been giving out free turkeys to people who are struggling, like me. The landlord raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Ah, struggling? I see. Well, since you haven't paid rent, I suppose this turkey belongs to me now. Without another word, the landlord snatched the turkey leg from Paul's hands, taking a huge bite. This is some good turkey, he said with a satisfied grin, chewing happily. Paul watched in stunned silence, his dreams of a peaceful evening dashed, and the little bit of dignity he had left slipping away with each chew the landlord took. His children, who had been watching the entire exchange, burst out laughing, the sound echoing around the house. Paul stood there, his heart sinking with each bite the landlord took. The children were in stitches, giggling uncontrollably as their father sank into defeat. The landlord's satisfaction only grew as he continued to devour the turkey, making exaggerated, sounds. You see, Paul, the landlord said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, this turkey, it's now mine. And until you pay your rent, you'll have no turkey and no peace. He walked out of the house, leaving Paul standing in the doorway, dumbfounded and defeated. Sarah, who had witnessed the entire scene, muttered under her breath, Next time, pay the rent before buying turkey, Paul. Paul shook his head, sitting down and burying his face in his hands. How did I get here? He thought, as his children continued to laugh at the ridiculous turn of events. From that day forward, the story of Paul's turkey debacle spread throughout the village. The name Turkey Master became his new nickname, a title he could never shake off, much to his embarrassment. But deep down, Paul knew he had learned an important lesson. Maybe it was time to start taking his responsibilities and his finances seriously, but first, he needed a new turkey. Paul's life had become a comedy of errors, each day more absurd than the last. His financial troubles seemed to multiply faster than his children, and just like his growing family, the debts piled up at a dizzying rate. Everywhere he turned, someone was there, ready to remind him that he owed them money. It was like an unholy parade of debt collectors, each with a bigger, louder presence than the last. One afternoon, after narrowly dodging another confrontational phone call from his uncle about a loan he had borrowed last year, Paul decided to make a pit stop at Mama Chica's provision shop. Mama Chica, bless her heart, was one of the few shopkeepers who allowed Paul to buy goods on credit, but she was no fool. She knew when enough was enough. Paul had always been good at sweet-talking his way out of awkward situations, but he didn't feel lucky today. As soon as he stepped into Mama Chica's shop, she spotted him from across the room, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Paul, Mama Chica called out, loud enough for the entire village to hear. Biko, don't come here if you don't have money. I don't have carry 100 naira again, and you've not paid for the last one you collected. She wagged her finger at him, almost as if he were one of her unruly children. Paul, ever the smooth talker, flashed his trademark grin, the kind that could sell ice to an Eskimo. Ah, Mama Chica, you know I was just passing by to greet you. How's the family? How's Chica doing in school? Mama Chica raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Family? Are you greeting my family or collecting my goods? Abeg, pay what you owe. Her voice had a sharpness that was impossible to ignore. With his signature dramatic laugh, Paul waved his hand dismissively, like he had just been offered a plate of food he wasn't hungry for. Mama Chica, you are too funny. I'll come back later when you are not angry, he said as he swiftly made his exit, pretending to answer an imaginary phone call. Mama Chica was having none of it. Paul, if you like, come back tomorrow without my money. She shouted after him, her voice trailing off as he made a hasty getaway, looking over his shoulder every few steps. Paul walked away, his heart racing, but his mind already working on the next brilliant escape plan. Who needs Mama Chica anyway, he thought. I'll figure something out. Maybe I can sell one of these certificates lying around in my room. Or maybe I should start a TikTok channel. People are making money off of doing nothing these days. Later that night, after he had managed to dodge both Mama Chica and his growing list of creditors, Paul sat outside his one-room apartment under the dim moonlight, his eyes fixed on the stars as if they held the key to all his problems. But deep down, he knew the only thing that was truly troubling him was the lack of money in his pocket and the rapidly increasing pile of unpaid bills. He sighed heavily, his mind wandering back to the dreams he had once had. He wasn't always like this. Paul had been a proud graduate of computer science, and when he graduated, the world seemed to be at his feet. He had been so sure that he was destined to be a tech genius, a Nigerian Elon Musk, no less. He could already see himself standing on the stage at a global tech conference, holding a giant check and laughing all the way to the bank. I would have been the Nigerian Elon Musk by now, Paul muttered to himself, his fingers tapping rhythmically on his lap. He scratched his head, thinking about his grand ideas from the past. His first attempt at becoming the next tech mogul was an app that was supposed to connect farmers in his village to the rest of the world. It was going to revolutionize the agricultural industry. But there was just one problem. The farmers didn't have smartphones, or reliable electricity, or in some cases, any interest in technology at all. I really should have seen that one coming, Paul mused, shaking his head. How was I supposed to know the farmers didn't even know how to send a text message, let alone use an app? Then there was his second idea, Village Hustle, a game based on the hustle and bustle of village life, with characters running around trying to outsmart each other and earn money. But that, too, was a failure. His laptop, which had cost him more money than it was worth, broke down just as he was finishing the game. The repairs were so expensive that they drained the last of his savings, leaving him with nothing but a broken laptop and a lost dream. Sighing deeply, Paul looked around his small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was his, and it was where his once promising tech career had come to die. Piles of certificates from various tech programs and online courses were strewn around the room, gathering dust in the corner like forgotten relics of a long-lost future. Maybe it's my village people holding me back, Paul thought with a bitter chuckle, rubbing his temple. He looked at the dark sky, wondering if it was his fate to always be stuck in this rut, forever chasing dreams that would never come true. Despite his many failures, Paul's optimism was as unshakable as ever. He refused to let the universe or his mounting debts get the best of him. There was always tomorrow, always another chance to make things right. After all, if life had taught him anything, it was that the journey of 1,000 failures was just one step away from success. Or at least that's what the motivational quotes on Facebook told him. Paul was tired of being stuck in his financial rut. He had tried everything he could think of, from selling his unused tech gadgets to planning a career as an influencer, but nothing was working. So, with no other option left, he decided to visit his old university roommate, Barrister Chidi, now a lawyer in the city. If anyone could help him, it had to be Chidi, right? As soon as Paul stepped into the sleek, air-conditioned office of Chidi's law firm, he was hit by a wave of humor. Chidi, wearing a crisp black suit and tie, sat behind his polished desk, looking like he had just walked off the cover of a legal magazine. He looked up from his papers, his eyes narrowing when he saw Paul. "Ha, Paul, you this man," Chidi bellowed. "Hope you've not come here to tell me about your dream of becoming the Nigerian Elon Musk again. If that's why you are here, see this stick the judge uses to rule judgment? I will use it to reset your brain." Paul raised an eyebrow, pretending to be offended. "Chidi, do you think because you wear that black and white coat they call a suit, you are better than me? Don't push me, oh. I can still beat you." Before he could finish his sentence, Chidi grabbed him by the collar and gave him a playful shake, as though he were scolding a child. "By the way, W here is the 20,000 naira I gave you in school. Pay me first before starting any dreams." Paul laughed and pried Chidi's hands off his shirt. "Ah, Chidi, you are too much. Don't you have some important legal cases to handle? Why you follow me like saying a small pekin?" Chidi chuckled, sitting back down in his chair. "You never change, Paul, always running away from your debts, but now you want to change the world with your apps? You better start by paying me first, then we'll talk about your dreams." Both of them burst into laughter, the tension of the moment gone in an instant. As they settled into the chairs, Paul leaned forward, his face serious. It was time to present his big idea, the one that was going to change everything. "I have a brilliant idea, Chidi. If I launch this app, I'll be the richest man in the world. Just wait, I'll even make you my personal lawyer. You'll be driving a Mercedes in no time. You'll be handling international clients, flying first class to New York for meetings." Paul's voice rose in excitement as he painted a picture of his future. Chidi burst out laughing, almost choking on his coffee. "Personal lawyer? You? You this man with your big dreams. Oga, calm down. You are better off opening a shop and selling computer accessories in Computer Village. Start with a wheelbarrow first before dreaming of the world." Paul's face fell, but only for a second. "My friend, this is not a joking matter. I am serious this time, I swear. I just need funding for my app idea. Once it launches, I'll show the world." Chidi wiped tears from his eyes, still chuckling. "Show the world? You can't even show your creditors you can pay them back, and now you want to show the world? My brother, calm down. Nobody's handing you 25 million naira for any app. You are better off asking Mama Chica for a loan." Paul pouted, but his resolve was unshaken. "You'll see. This time I'll make it work." Chidi, still half laughing, raised an eyebrow. Okay. How much are we talking about for this world-changing project?" Paul sat up confidently, adjusting himself like he was about to deliver the deal of a lifetime. "It's just 25 million naira. Small money." Chidi's jaw dropped. "Ah, I said it. I knew one day you'd turn to armed robbery. See this man, oh. I am a barrister, oh. I will even sue you and send you to Kirikiri prison before you finish this story." Paul smirked. "Chidi, I am serious. You are my good friend, and that's why I came to you. I know you can help me." Chidi stared at him for a moment, his face a mix of disbelief and amusement. "Help you how? Do I look like a bank to you? You better go to your bank and collect a loan, or better still, download PalmPay and apply for a loan there. That's where all the cool people are getting their money from these days." Paul's eyes lit up. "That's why I call you my friend, always giving better suggestions." Chidi raised his hands in protest. "Please, oh, I was joking. If you go to the bank and collect a loan you can't repay, they'll carry you and your family to Kirikiri. I won't come and defend you, oh. Don't drag me into your madness." Paul waved Chidi off, determined. "My friend, calm down. This loan will work. You just wait and see." They spent the next few minutes joking about Paul's latest get-rich-quick schemes, each one more absurd than the last. But deep down, Paul knew he had to try anything if he was ever going to change his life. When Paul got home that evening, the thought of the loan began to weigh heavily on him. He lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the risks and possibilities. What if this is the one that works? What if I finally make it? If I don't take the risk, how will I ever make it? He whispered to himself, the excitement bubbling up in his chest. He had to do it. There was no other way. As he drifted off to sleep, the final thought on his mind was the loan and how much it could change his life. He just hoped it wouldn't land him in Kirikiri. Paul woke up the next morning determined to take the first step toward his dream, no matter how big the obstacles. With a determined look, he grabbed his only clean shirt and pair of trousers, worn to the point of being almost translucent, and headed to the bank. His wife, Nakem, barely acknowledged his departure. She was busy battling the kids over breakfast or the lack of. As Paul approached the bank, he rehearsed his speech. "Oga manager, I need this money to make my dream a reality." He nodded to himself. Yes, that sounded convincing. Inside the bank, the air conditioning hit him like the first rainfall after a dry season. The bank was bustling with activity, but at the customer service desk sat Tolu, a man with shifty eyes and a habit of glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. Tolu was multitasking, handling legitimate inquiries from customers while secretly facilitating fraudulent transactions with local Yahoo boys. Tolu had just finished a call with one of his dubious partners, a fraudster who urgently needed a dormant account to funnel stolen funds. "Tolu, I've got big money income. Find me a dormant account fast." The fraudster had hissed over the phone. "Relax," Tolu muttered, lowering his voice and turning slightly to avoid drawing attention from his colleagues. "I'll send you one in 5 minutes. Just give me a moment." At that exact moment, Paul approached him with a hopeful smile. "Excuse me, my brother," Paul began, his voice polite but firm. "Please, I want to find out how I can get a loan from this bank." Tolu gave Paul one dismissive glance, sizing him up like a hawk eyeing a scrawny chick. His tattered shoes and ill-fitted clothes told the story of a man drowning in poverty. Without even feigning interest, Tolu gestured lazily toward the manager's office. "Go and meet the general manager," he said in a tone that barely masked his disdain. Paul knew he looked like a man who had borrowed his own clothes, so he simply nodded and thanked Tolu, deciding to save his pride for another day. The general manager, a rotund man with a face that constantly looked like someone had stolen his lunch, sat behind a massive mahogany desk. He was reviewing some documents when Paul entered. Without even looking up, the manager waved him toward a chair. "Young man, what do you want?" Paul cleared his throat. "Sir, I am here to request a loan." The manager looked up, and his face immediately twisted into a sneer. "Another one of your kind. You people think this bank is a charity organization. Do you know how many people have collected loans and vanished into thin air? Who do you think will pay back the money? Me?" Paul forced a smile, keeping his frustration in check. "Oga manager, trust me. If you give me this money, what I will deposit in this bank in the future will be more than the net worth of your bank and 5 others combined." The manager's expression shifted from annoyance to outright disbelief. "Young man, do you think this is a comedy club? State your demand and get out." "I need 25 million naira," Paul said confidently. The manager leaned back, staring at Paul like he'd just declared himself the king of Nigeria. 25 million? Look at yourself. Even your shadow doesn't believe you can pay back 25 million. Paul, trying to remain calm, handed the manager a folder containing the documents for a piece of land he had inherited from his late father. The manager flipped through the papers and let out a derisive snort. "This land isn't even worth 2% of the amount you are requesting. Where is your collateral? Show me something tangible." Paul pleaded, explaining his plans and dreams. The manager finally sighed, asking for his account details to check his banking history. When the manager logged into Paul's account, his irritation turned to frustration. "This account has been dormant for 3 years, and you want us to give you a loan? You are only eligible for 5 million, and that's being generous. Paul thought about it for a moment and decided it was better than nothing. Fine, reactivate the account for me and I'll take the 5 million. The manager logged in to reactivate the account, and suddenly his face turned pale. He adjusted his glasses, blinking at the screen as if his eyes were playing tricks on him. "Sir, please excuse me for one moment," he said, his tone completely different. He stood abruptly, called his secretary, and whispered something to her before returning to his seat, his face plastered with an unnatural smile. "What's happening?" Paul asked, confused. "Sir, I must apologize for how I treated you earlier," the manager said, bowing slightly. "I didn't realize who I was dealing with. Please forgive me." Paul raised an eyebrow. "Forgive you for what?" The secretary returned, carrying a tray with a chilled bottle of malt, a steaming plate of jollof rice, and a sizable piece of fried turkey. "Sir, please relax and enjoy," the manager said, gesturing toward the food. Paul was completely bewildered. Wait! Why the sudden change of attitude? And my favorite turkey, this is getting suspicious." The manager hesitated, then cleared his throat. "Sir, while reactivating your account, I saw your balance. You have 2.5 billion naira in your account." As soon as the manager told Paul he had 2.5 billion naira in his account, Paul felt his knees weaken. His first instinct was to scream, but he immediately caught himself. He straightened his shoulders, adjusted his faded tie, and cleared his throat. "Oh yes," Paul said coolly, as if 2.5 billion was pocket change. "I completely forgot about this account. You know, I have so many accounts I barely keep track of them. This is just one of those accounts where I throw in spare change I am not using." The manager nodded eagerly, his eyes wide with admiration. "Of course, sir. Someone of your status must have multiple accounts. Forgive my earlier rudeness. I assure you, this bank is at your service." Paul waved his hand dismissively. "It's fine. We all make mistakes." The manager leaned forward, lowering his voice to sound more professional. "Sir, with the amount in your account, we can offer you a partnership deal. Why don't you take a 500 million naira loan to expand your ventures? We'll also provide you with VIP banking privileges." Paul rubbed his chin, trying to look thoughtful while his heart raced like a Formula One car. No, I won't be needing a loan anymore. Since the money is here, transfer 2 billion to another account of mine and leave the rest. I'll be punching in more funds by the weekend." The manager's face lit up. "Of course, sir. More funds? Fantastic. Please, kindly provide the account details for the transfer." Paul scribbled down the account number of another bank he remembered and handed it over. The manager immediately authorized the transfer. Within minutes, 2 billion naira was sent to the second account, and Paul stood up to leave. "Thank you for your assistance," Paul said, extending his hand. The manager shook it vigorously. "It's an honor, sir. Please, feel free to call on me anytime. We'll ensure your funds are handled with utmost care." As Paul walked out of the manager's office, he felt a mix of exhilaration and confusion. He had walked into the bank as a broke man begging for a loan and was now leaving as a billionaire. On his way out, he spotted Tolu at the customer service desk. Paul walked over to him and said, "Thank you for the directions earlier. I am through now." Tolu, who was busy pretending to look busy, barely glanced up. He waved Paul off dismissively. All right, have a good day." Paul chuckled and walked out, thinking about how life could change in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, back at the bank, Tolu received a call from his fraudulent partner. "Have you seen the money?" the voice growled on the other end. Tolu quickly opened the account and froze when he saw the balance. The money had indeed been deposited, but 2 billion naira was gone, transferred out just minutes ago. "Tolu, what's going on?" the voice demanded. Tolu's hands trembled as he whispered, "The money was deposited, but someone has already moved 2 billion out of the account." "What? Who did it?" Tolu's mind raced. His heart pounded as he realized the gravity of the situation. If the fraudster didn't get his money, Tolu's life was on the line. And if the bank discovered the fraud, Tolu would end up in jail. Suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind, Paul. Could it be him? But how? Tolu tried to piece it together, but nothing made sense. All he knew was that he was trapped. He stared at the screen, sweat dripping down his face, as the fraudster's voice barked through the phone. Tolu, you better fix this or you are a dead man. Watch out for part 2. Don't forget to subscribe to Adaby Tales. Turn on the notification bell and share your thoughts in the comment section.